Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into the concept of deadweight loss. This presentation will explore how market inefficiencies develop and the effects they have on economic efficiency, particularly in areas like taxation, monopoly power, price controls, and externalities. As you can see from the image here, we'll be looking through the lens of digital finance and broader economic principles. I'm excited to guide you through these important topics. Let's get started. When we talk about deadweight loss, we're referring to the value of those trades or transactions that could have benefited both buyers and sellers but simply don't happen because of market distortions. This means that total surplus, which is the combined benefit to everyone involved in the market, is reduced. In other words, deadweight loss represents the economic opportunities lost when something stops the market from operating efficiently, like taxes, price controls, or monopolies. The image here of financial charts helps to remind us how data and analytics can illustrate these impacts clearly. Understanding this concept is key to recognizing how policies and market conditions affect overall welfare. Here, we focus on why deadweight loss is so important. Deadweight loss represents the actual loss of value that affects not only consumers and producers, but society as a whole. This happens when taxes, regulations, market power, or price controls interfere with efficient trades. These barriers prevent markets from operating smoothly, which means fewer mutually beneficial exchanges take place, ultimately reducing overall economic welfare. The bustling market image illustrates how vibrant and efficient markets support healthy trade, and when obstacles get in the way, the benefits we see here start to fade. Understanding this real economic impact helps us appreciate the importance of minimizing such losses for everyone's benefit. Here we're looking at a comparison between an efficient market and a distorted market. In an efficient market, we see that the price and quantity settle at their equilibrium levels, which means the quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. This balance maximizes consumer surplus, meaning buyers get the highest possible benefit from their purchases. At the same time, producer surplus is also maximized, so sellers achieve their best possible gains. When both consumer and producer surpluses are at their peak, total surplus, which represents the overall economic welfare, is also maximized. On the other hand, in a distorted market, prices and quantities deviate from their equilibrium points, often due to external factors like taxes, subsidies, or regulations. This alteration leads to a reduction in consumer surplus, since consumers are not able to fully enjoy the benefits they would in a balanced setting. Producer surplus is also affected, fluctuating based on the nature of the distortion. The combined effect is a decrease in total surplus, indicating a loss in overall efficiency and welfare. Understanding these differences helps highlight why maintaining market equilibrium is crucial for maximizing benefits across the economy. Here we're looking at the deadweight loss that results from a tax. First, let's consider the price and quantity effects. When a tax is imposed, buyers end up paying more while sellers receive less. This shift leads to a decrease in the total quantity traded in the market. Now, this reduction in transaction volume creates what's called deadweight loss. Essentially, some trades that would have been mutually beneficial for both buyers and sellers no longer happen, causing a loss of overall economic efficiency. This image with receipts and tax documents visually ties into the financial impact of these tax-related effects. Here we see how elasticity influences the size of deadweight loss. On the horizontal axis, we have different levels of demand elasticity, ranging from inelastic to highly elastic. On the vertical axis, the deadweight loss is measured in arbitrary units. What stands out is that as demand becomes more elastic, the deadweight loss increases significantly, from 10 units with inelastic demand up to 60 units when demand is highly elastic. This tells us that markets with more elastic demand tend to experience larger inefficiencies and losses when prices are distorted. Understanding this relationship is crucial for policymakers and businesses when considering interventions that might impact market efficiency. Here, we're looking at how monopolies create deadweight loss in the market. First, monopolies restrict output, producing less than what would be seen in a competitive market. This limited supply allows them to raise prices and boost their profits. However, this output restriction has a significant consequence. It causes some buyers and sellers to remain unmatched. Because not all demand is met and some potential trades don't happen, we see a deadweight loss. This means overall economic surplus declines and is shifted away from consumers, reducing overall market efficiency. The image of stacked gold and silver coins symbolizes the concentration of wealth that can occur under monopoly power. Here, we're looking at how price ceilings and price floors impact the market, particularly focusing on rent ceilings and minimum wage laws. First, rent ceilings, which set a maximum price landlords can charge for rent, often lead to a reduced supply of rental housing. When landlords can't charge what they consider a fair market price, they're less motivated to offer as many units, so the overall availability of rental homes decreases. On the other hand, minimum wage laws act as price floors by setting a lowest legal wage for workers. While well-intentioned, these laws can result in fewer jobs because employers might hire fewer workers when wages are higher. This can reduce employment opportunities in certain job markets. Both of these examples show how setting limits on prices, whether maximum or minimum, can have significant effects on supply and employment. Here, we're focusing on how externalities create hidden losses in the market. When we talk about deadweight loss from externalities, we're highlighting that market prices often fail to capture the true social costs or benefits of goods and services. For instance, negative externalities like pollution, which you can see depicted by the factory emitting smoke in this image, impose costs on society that aren't reflected in the price of the products. On the other hand, positive externalities, such as the benefits from education or vaccinations, provide additional value that the market price doesn't account for. Because of these unaccounted factors, markets often reach outcomes that aren't efficient, meaning resources aren't allocated in the best possible way for society as a whole. This gap between private costs or benefits and social costs or benefits is what leads to deadweight loss. Here we're looking at how economists measure deadweight loss, which is a critical concept in understanding market inefficiencies. First, let's discuss the key inputs. Economists rely on several main factors: the size of the tax imposed, changes in quantity traded, and assumptions about elasticity, which reflects how sensitive buyers and sellers are to price changes. Next, on the measurement concept, deadweight loss essentially quantifies the value of trades that no longer happen because of these distortions. It's the loss in economic efficiency when transactions that would have occurred in a competitive market are reduced. Finally, the estimation approach combines prices, quantities, elasticities, and the size of the market wedge, the difference created by the tax or distortion, to calculate the deadweight loss. This method helps economists put a concrete number on the inefficiencies caused by various market interventions. The graph on the right visually represents these relationships, showing how rates and quantities interact to influence the overall deadweight loss. Let's review some real-world examples that show how economic principles play out in everyday situations. Starting with cigarette taxes, these are meant to reduce smoking by making cigarettes more expensive. However, they can also create deadweight loss because they push consumption below the level that's considered efficient. Moving on to airline baggage fees, while these extra charges discourage some travelers from checking bags, air travel would be affected by losses on profound, tangible benefits. They can lead to inefficiencies in the system, as passengers might alter their behavior in unexpected ways. Rent control, which imposes price ceilings on housing, often results in shortages and market inefficiencies, since landlords may be less willing to rent or maintain properties. In the case of monopoly pricing, monopolies set prices above the marginal cost, which reduces the total surplus in the market and can hurt overall economic welfare. Lastly, pollution taxes are designed to reduce harmful emissions, but they can sometimes cause distortions in the market as companies adjust their practices or production in response to these costs. Each of these examples highlights the balance between policy goals and market impacts. When we talk about policy trade-offs, one key aspect to consider is efficiency. Some policies might create what's called deadweight loss, meaning they reduce economic efficiency in the short term. However, These same policies can improve overall efficiency by tackling important market failures or externalities that wouldn't be addressed otherwise. On the other hand, policies often need to balance other goals beyond just efficiency. For example, they may prioritize fairness, boosting public revenue, protecting consumers, or reducing harm, even if this means sacrificing some efficiency. This balance is crucial in crafting effective and equitable policies that reflect broader societal values. Let's review the key takeaways from our discussion. First, deadweight loss refers to the cost that arises when trades don't happen because of inefficiencies or market interventions. It's essentially lost value in the economy. Next, the impact of elasticity is important. When demand and supply are more elastic, the deadweight loss tends to be larger because buyers and sellers are more responsive to price changes, leading to greater reductions in trade. Finally, when considering policy decisions, the goal should be to minimize these unnecessary losses while still achieving important social objectives. This balance is crucial for designing effective policies that don't hinder market efficiency more than necessary. The image here shows a collaborative team working together, which highlights how careful discussion and analysis are key to making well-informed policy choices.